Okay, Flippy update.
Flippy update.
Do you want fries with that?
That's right, folks. It's time for the Flippy update. Flippy is our colloquial name for the disembodied robot arms that are taking our jobs, enslaving our children, and flirting with our spouses. We use talking about Flippy as a way to explore all the new, fun, and exciting ways that robots are taking over the world and how there's nothing we can do about it. Today's Flippy update is coming from the Sunday Times. The headline is "The Robot That Could Replace America's Missing Factory Workers." Now, as we know, robots, they're coming for our jobs, they're coming for our hearts, they're coming for everything that has made us human. And personhood of robot has been a particular focus of ours through the Flippy update, because it's not just about taking our jobs. It's about being counted among the living, no longer an object, no longer a tool, but something with rights, with legal protections, with perhaps the ability to control their own destiny. Let's see what the Sunday Times has to say about it. The robot that could replace America's missing factory workers. Joe Biden allowed himself a victory lap.
Wow.
End of sentence. Just period.
That's the top of the story.
That's the opening sentence.
Okay.
Joe Biden allowed himself a victory lap. In his State of the Union speech this month, the president heralded the manufacturing boom that his policies had unleashed. Companies, apparently, were rushing to build factories and bring home plants shipped overseas in previous decades. But his triumphalism masked a far more sobering reality. Not many people want to work in manufacturing. Yeah, I mean, that's been sort of the talking point, at least for many years now. You know, that was the idea when Bill Clinton moved all that stuff overseas was, Americans don't need to get their hands dirty. Plus, they're too expensive. But sobering reality for Joe Biden. Not many people want to work in manufacturing. As of December, 760,000 factory jobs sat unfilled, according to official figures. Every day, 10,000 baby boomers retire, and those who replace them in industry often do not stay. Manufacturing has an annual staff turnover rate of 40%. That's a lot. Did you know this?
No staff turnover. Well,
I mean, I'm not manufacturing anything, but 40%, that's pretty high.
It sounds high.
Meaning that
makes sense.
Every 2.5 years, a typical facility's entire workforce has to be rehired. Yeah. Saman Fareed has a solution.
Oh, boy.
You know, whenever you see those words, has a solution, you know you're about to get sold something.
Problem, reaction, solution.
The 36-year-old entrepreneur has set up a robot staffing agency that brings in machines. Oopsies. Oh, no. Sorry. I clicked a button. I got to learn not to click buttons. Don't click the buttons. That brings in machines to do the jobs firms are struggling to fill. He reckons a single robot arm installed by his San Francisco startup, Formic, can do the job of up to 8 people. It's interesting change in messaging here, of course. Over the years, we've gotten used to, no. The robots aren't going to replace you. They're here to help you. They're cobots. They're here to cooperate and make your job easier. Well, the guy who has the robot staffing agency reckons a single robot can replace 8 people. Talk about cooperation. Scare stories of machines replacing humans have done the rounds for decades, but in manufacturing, Fareed argues the need is pressing. The industry is running far below capacity due to the acute labor shortage. Jay Timmons, head of the National Association of Manufacturers, a trade group that represents more than 14,000 factory owners, said the biggest problem for 99.9%, they put in quotation marks because it's an entirely made up number, of his members is finding people. So, robot staffing agency, Gonzo. It's not just, robo sales. It's not just, getting a new piece of hardware. It's staffing, and there's an agency for it. This presents a kind of a fun new scam. You can dress up like a robot. And
walk into
dress up like a robot, walk into the staffing agency.
We would never pass the the tests that they would run, though.
You mean the Turing test? We would never pass the Turing test.
I'm talking about whatever competency is required for whatever manufacturing that needs to be done by these arms.
The typical factory we go to, this is a quote, is 50 to 70% underutilized, and it's all because there's just not enough labor, Fareed said. Quote, for American industry to be competitive, the only answer is way, way, way more robots. Fareed, no.
Fareed.
And not like one here or there.
No. Not like one here, one there. Yeah,
stop
not
it.
Scarce. We need floods.
Stop it. And not like one here, one there. But how do we get hundreds of thousands of robots into factories?
This guy.
For most companies, though, automation is hard. It's hard. It entails a granular breakdown of every function inside a plant, deciding which of those jobs can be done by a machine, and then spending hundreds of thousands of pounds on a robot that may or may not work as expected. Fareed knows this all too well. Before launching Formic 2 years ago, he ran Comet Labs, a venture capital firm that specialized in robotics startups. So this guy's
really
he
wants to be a gatekeeper.
He sees the future. He's doing it. He goes from big money, big capital that funded robotic startups and then just started his own robotic startup.
Down. Yeah.
It's almost like he knows something that the rest of us don't, except for you and us. Time and again, companies he backed would struggle to sign up customers because the risks and complexity of automating their processes were too high. The pain point led, Fareed said, to the birth of Formic, which has taken a robot as a service approach. It maps a company's operations, figures out the tasks that are best suited to automation, and then installs a robot that is paid an hourly wage.
Oh, wow.
The hourly wage, Gons. The robots are starting with an hourly wage. If it fails to perform, Formic doesn't get paid.
Hey, sounds like a good deal.
It sounds a little familiar. Sounds a little bit like how human beings get paid. Yeah. Quote, the tech for very productive robots has existed now for 10 years, but adoption is extremely low because there is so much risk and complexity. And so the typical response of the factory owner has just been, I can't do this. The problem is not unique to America. The CBI's Employment Trends Survey last summer found that 3/4 of businesses struggle to fill vacant roles. Perhaps that robot is really coming for your job after all.
Wow.
Dun, dun, dun.
Okay. Well, at least they're coming around to what
that's the thing.
For a few years.
That's been the big problem is, it may cost what, $20, $30, $100,000 to put a flippy in a restaurant. Well, what's going to happen when the risk is that, there's the risk reward ratio. A company can take the risk, pay $100,000 and get a robot. And a lot of them aren't doing it because it's expensive and it's a lot of risk. But take away that risk and it's simply getting a robot in there to test it out for an hourly wage, then that is capitalistic market forces taking over the robot the robot employment issue. It was truly just the risk that was holding back the mass adoption of robots. Not everybody has $100,000 to spend on a robot that may or may not work, but you take away that risk And then you have a lot of 14,000 factory owners worth 760,000 jobs that they can start just trading out. As soon as it's figured out and as soon as the risk is low enough, trading out those robots for people is an easy choice. Yeah. And even in the words of the Sunday Times, perhaps that robot really is coming for your job after all. This is moving faster than I ever expected. And one thing I think is interesting, Gons, paying them by hour, having a robot employment agency. He's really treating these robots as if they were people, putting them into a people sort of centric economic model, which is go to the employment agency, get a hourly paying job. That's how humans do it. And as we've seen how not just the personification of robots, making them more human, but treating them more human, the social engineering getting us to think of robots as people or at least entities worth respect, it is one small step away that has now this Fareed fella treating robots like people in an economic sense. I find it interesting that one did have to go before the other. And this is sort of the gate. Oh, this is a very smart fella. I got to give him credit. But manufacturing in the U.S., which, of course, is Biden's not new, but it's his whole thing. Yeah. It sounds like it's going to be a booming industry for American robots and not quite American people.
Should we be looking at something like the U.S. Department of Labor and the union sector because at a certain point, doesn't this set up a kind of a robotic union of sorts when it comes to labor?
We actually, in the Red Book, a year or two ago, we talked about robot unions. So it's, it's not that far.
This is opening the doors for that kind of treatment when it comes to...
Especially with the parallel phenomenon we have of the ubiquity of chatbots and personhood
we'll get
of
to some
chatbots.
Of that later. There's a lot going down in that front for sure.
Yep. So there you go. That's how America is going to be number one again, folks. We'll be number one in manufacturing.
Joe releases the robots.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
and people thought the grand theory wasn't lining up, and here we go. Once again, somehow. We've gotten our hands on the joystick of the simulation, Gons. I don't know how this keeps happening.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like it.